Hey, it's Adele Shabanovic, and for the video song blog assignment, I chose The Night Chicago Died. It was by Paper Lace, and the songwriter was Mitch Murray. The song talks about how big riot in Chicago happened with a gangster named Al Capone and his gang, and caused an all-out riot, and there was cops that died all over the place, and that that's why they called it The Night Chicago Died. And it it talks about how his family was crying and mentioning it, and people around the town was talking about how the night Chicago died, in fact. And it was in the era of policing between the 1920s, I believe, because that was around the Prohibition era. And he mentions Al Capone's name in there because Al Capone was the gangster that they say that he had a riot with the police with his gang. And it was because of the Prohibition era, because they banned alcohol sales, and it couldn't stop the gangsters. It stopped the gangsters from having the sale of alcohol anymore, and made the police were being strict on it and didn't allow alcohol to be sold at all. They were trying to make the nations dry, as is stated in the chapter. In the 1920s, it was a big thing, and the gangsters went on from that to jump into vice crimes and such, and gambling, and you know crimes, drug deals. Everything went to drugs instead of alcohol because they banned alcohol at that time. And the song talks about how the riot with Al Capone was such a big deal, and it was so harsh because people were talking about it nonstop because how many cops died, and it was policing, I think, to a max of a riot. That's one of the worst things to be in, with a gangster as Al Capone and his army. That's a pretty big riot, and everybody knew at that time, and still to this day, they know who Al Capone is and how big he is. And when there's a riot with him, people obviously are gonna talk. And also in the song, he talks about how he was in his brother and his mom was crying and mentioning the night Chicago died. And then at the end, he mentions how his dad walks in and wipes his tears away, her tears away, sorry, and mentions that they mentions that the night Chicago died, pretty much because the gang was an all-out shootout with the police, and it caused so many cops, around 100, he says in the song, to die. And the elements of this song, or what he talks about, I believe is an act and a mental state, because Al Capone wanted to rule everything. And in the beginning of the song, he mentions that Al Capone wanted to rule Chicago, wanted to take over Chicago, but the police obviously weren't letting him take over with the business he was doing. And you know, I think it was a mental state by him, because he wanted to do crime against police officers in order to, get them out of their way. The cops are gonna be everywhere, and that day they were everywhere, trying to fight off, not letting Chicago fall to Al Capone. And it was an act because he was committing a crime, an act of crime, because he was assaulting officers with deadly weapons. And back then they had pretty big weapons, and gangsters got in touch with everything, and they had all kinds of guns at that time. And you know, the song is something I heard for the first time, and I haven't heard it and doing the looking at it and watching some of the pictures that showed on the song, and it was a really good song. It was just kind of sad too, how they explain it. And The Night Chicago Died is a great song to listen to. Definitely need to check that out. And I also believe that in today's world, we still have this kind of stuff, except for the riots, obviously. But the nights, there's many of gangs in today's world. Maybe not as big as Al Capone was a gangster, maybe, but there is kingpins in this today's age, and police are continuing to fight gangsters all the time and trying to stop them from making their money in some sort of way illegally, or any kinds of drugs or crimes and everything. Crime rates go up a lot because of gangs, because they're trying to take over territory by territory, taking over things a lot like Al Capone did. And he mentions in the song that Al Capone wanted to take over Chicago, and he pretty much had a lot of it taken over. He just needed some more things, but the riots wasn't helping. But and in today's world, we don't see riots as much as the song explains back then in the 1920s. In today's world, we don't see any riots, barely any, because we have such a strong law enforcement team, and it's not allowing people to cause riots like that, and kingpins to have so much space and such freedom as Al Capone did, because we have such technology and the agencies that will track him down and arrest him pretty quickly before they even know it. And back then they didn't have that during that time period, and they explained it. It's not into full detail, but it gives you kind of a picture of what he was trying to do and explain. And today's, I believe it connects in today's world with policing, and a lot in Idaho. We have a lot of state in Idaho. This state, is not as big in crimes of gangs and stuff. We do have gangs, pretty big ones, all kinds of races of gangs, jails, outside of jails, everywhere in different parts of Idaho. But we have laws that prevent gang activity, and it allows people to be more freer and allows them to feel comfortable around, because the law enforcement is not letting gangs slide by. Back in the 1900s, 1920s, this kind of era, they let people, Al Capone had cops on his side, and he was paying cops at the time, which, led him to becoming such a big gangster and kingpin that nobody could stop him, because he had everybody on his side. He was paying everybody, and back then that was a big thing as well. And but to come to a conclusion, Paper Lace, Mitch Murray, they wrote a song, and I believe it is a great song. The Night Chicago Died is the song name. Definitely need to listen to it. Talks about it, the riot, about riots, Al Capone. And not too much into detail, but it gives you a little picture of it. But I hope you take a listen to it, and that's all I have for. Bye.